Okay, so today we're starting Perek Chav Daled. It could be that this is no good for the sound for it to be here. Yeah, Medav wissen, we have to know. Okay, so today we're starting Perek Chav Daled. So, the Alter Rebbe in Perek Chav, the Alter Rebbe started speaking about that Anoichi and Lo Yeh Lecha, that the first two of the Aseres HaDibris, Hashem declared them because they represent the entire Torah. The entire Torah are wrapped into the first two Dibris, Anoichi and Lo Yeh Lecha. Anoichi, the affirmation that the Eibishter is the one and only, and Lo Yeh Lecha, not to have, not to serve other gods. So in the future Parakim, the Alter Rebbe explained how that is. So in Perek Chaf Aleph, the Alter Rebbe explained the Anoichi part, that the whole world is really one with Hashem. So, in other words, there's a oneness. There's a bittul of like a dibur in the koyach, like a person, like a spoken word, batul to etzem hanefesh. Hashem created the world with speech. So really, we're all part of Hashem. And so that was Perek. In other words, the truth is that we're all one with Hashem. There's no world, there's no Metzias. There is nothing else outside of Hashem. In Perek Chaf Aleph, the Alter Rebbe spoke about the Lo Yeh Lecha aspect, that there is Klippe in the world. There are existences that consider themselves to be independent and outside of Hashem. So you have and that's the Lo Yeh Lecha, right? That's the Lo Yeh. We're looking at Perek Chav Daled. We're just starting. So Parakim Chav Aleph and Chav Beis spoke about the way it is from Hashem's perspective, the way it is in truth. Parakim Chav Gimel and Chav Daled speak about the avodah. In other words, Chaf Aleph and Chav Beis are speaking about the haskalah of bitla elamis and klippe. And Parakim Chav Gimel and Chav Daled speak about how we actualize these two forces that Alter Rebbe is explaining, that a person could live like there's only Hashem. You know, that's like the tzaddik's reality, that really there's no other existence. One of the things that Friday night, I was giving a Dvar Torah Friday night, and I was just speaking about this concept that when we talk about meditation, learning, knowing, so true, like investigation, like from a philosophical perspective, is to learn about things that we can't observe with our eye, but our mind is so clear about them that they're as strong as a reality without actually seeing it. Right? What do I mean? For example, let's say I meet a student and I see that he's struggling. Right? So I say, there must be something in his background that is getting in the way of him actualizing himself. But I don't know, I didn't observe it. But I have enough evidence and enough experience and when it shows up a certain way, that I'm as certain as if I would have observed. Right? Just from seeing the reality. So when we think about Hashem, when we say, the fact that Hashem created the world, what's the conclusion? Like, what's the impact of the fact that Hashem created the world? And then on the other hand, and yes, at the same time, there are existences in the world that deny it. First of all, how can they deny it? How do they have a different experience? Like, they're living, what we call Das Tachtein. Das Tachtein means, from Hashem's perspective, Hashem's existence is a certainty. The world's existence, we have to know, does it exist or it doesn't exist? Like, is the world real? Is it real? Right? Is it only our perception? It's like if someone shows you a video where there's a trick in it, like the beer with the people playing soccer, like you didn't see it. You know what I'm talking about?
It's always happens in the Russian games. Right.
No, so they have this illusion, like, it's not an illusion, but it's like they see people playing a game, soccer or whatever, they're kicking around the ball, you watch the video, and then after 2 minutes they say, did you see that a beer passed by? Like, I don't understand, I was watching the video, I didn't see.
Because it was like a focus on their, like, you have different focus.
Right, so if that's the case, if we could miss what's right in front of our eyes, so it's all really our perception is flawed, basically, right? So, Hashem created, maybe it's all an illusion. Maybe it's all just our perception. Like if we talk philosophically.
They asked the author about that. Are we in a virtual world?
In the matrix.
Right. That's why Hasidus says, what do you mean? It says, Bereshis bara Elokim, so there must be a world. Because the Torah says, right? Our observation.
The author said, the whole emphasis is not machshava, is ma'aseh. So it wouldn't make sense that Baruch Hu created a world where the whole emphasis is ma'aseh.
If it wasn't real.
And the machshava is not counted.
Right. Okay, so Perek Chav Daled is how we actualize Perek Chav Gimel. The Alter Rebbe spoke about the Anoichi Hashem Alekecha, meaning a person learns Torah and they do mitzvahs, so the whole person is becoming connected with Hashem. The garments of the neshama, and the body and the energy in the body, and we're all becoming one. And in Perek Chav Daled, which we're talking about right now, the Alter Rebbe presents the klippa side, the separation side. A person who lives in a state of separateness from Hashem. Before we read inside, I would say 2 points that are important points in this perek. One is that the physical body is a greater obstacle, a greater veil. It hides Hashem more than the ultimate klippa. In other words, as much as there are spiritual concealments, physical concealment is incomparable. Right? So that's number one. The second thing is the Alter Rebbe presents the idea of the Gemara, the idea of a ruach shtus, that when a person does an aveira, the cause is a certain, like a person is a little delusional. They're like, by doing this little thing, it can't be that it's going to ruin my relationship with Hashem. We're still going to be good, And like that concept of Ruach Shtus, that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara in Seita, we learned it it's already a couple of weeks ago. And Dav Gimel, that the Ein Adam Ever Aveira, a person does not do an Aveira we have to say it in English, not in the way Chazal. The only reason a person does an Aveira is because they're deluding themselves. I remember once, I was in some kind of workshop somewhere, and they spoke about how certain, people with autism, or I don't remember, they're not able to lie. Like they can't develop an addiction because
they see the world in
right, because they can't. It's open to them. It's transparent, so they can't. In order to develop an addiction, you have to delude yourself. There has to be I don't remember what kind of diagnosis they were talking about, but that was the statement at that time. I'm not talking about like a sugar.
So in order to have a vice, there has to be a level of
right. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to,
at least to sustain the vice.
That's why always, when I know for myself, right? Like you say l'chaim, and then I'm under the table. Then it's like, because I didn't eat. Because somebody pressured me. Because they gave me 100%. Not
mixed.
100 proof. Not because I mixed. There's always a story. It's always right. It's in other words, it's not straight out. It's so that idea we learned in Likutei Torah. The Alter Rebbe has a very sharp mimer. The Alter Rebbe speaks about the people who delude themselves, like by looking at inappropriate things. They're like, "What am I doing? I'm just looking. It's not. I'm not doing. I'm not." So, like he goes through the silliness of what happens in a person's mind. Like, okay, come, let's learn a little bit inside. We'll go quickly. It's a longer perek than what we had last week. And let's try to finish on our target time. V'zeh umazeh. The pasuk says that Hashem created the world that kedusha and klipa mirror each other. The word leumas, the way the Alter Rebbe also so leumas could mean to mirror. Leumas means also it opposes. It's like a political campaign. This is my fight is against you, like, right? There's two forces that are sparring. The nefesh alikis and the nefesh havam is kedusha and klipa. They're in the ring, and that's the shasam mitzvahs. Leisa said the iraisa v'kol yisurid derabanan. Even a rabbinic prohibition is also part of the same lo yeh lecha. It's also part of this like idol worship that the Alter Rebbe will explain. He says, "Me'achar shehein neged ritzoni v'chachmasi yizbarich," being that we have a definition of what Hashem asks us not to do, and it's v'hafocha mamish. They're diametrically opposite of what Hashem desires. In other words, Hashem says, "I want you to do this." Then there's other things maybe that it's up to you. What flavor cereal you want to have for breakfast. That's up to you. But then you say, but there, no, that you can't touch. So that's hafacha mamish. Right? Don't touch that. The only reason why it's there is to reward you. Right? It's like you created an obstacle course for I don't know, for the dogs in the show. Right? So I don't know. The purpose isn't for them to hit it. That's not... that's to show their greatness. That's the purpose. So it's neged ritzoyne, the hafacha mamish. So being that these things are against Hashem's will, and we explained previously that Hashem's will created the world. There was a cause. The cause to creation, Hashem had an agenda. He wanted something to happen. And that's Kiyum HaMitzvahs. So these things, Heim, Nifradim, Yechudim, V'achdusi, Yizbarech, Betachles, Apirud Mamish, they are completely separate from Hashem. Right? Betachles, Apirud. In other words, in Perek Aleph, the Alter Rebbe said, Klippa means I exist. Just the fact that a person feels independent, that he's a Metzias, that's klippa. But they're not doing a sin. They're just a metzias. It's like imagine, right? We couldn't imagine, right? It's like imagine you're sitting at a fabring and the Rebbe gives a sicha, and then they finish the sicha and a guy sitting there is like, I don't think he's right. You know what I mean? Like Shmenderovich, he has what to say. Right? So he's a Metzias. He has an opinion. I have an opinion. But neged, klippe, to defy, that's already another story. So that's why the Alter Rebbe uses this lashon. Betachlis hapirud mamish. Right? Not just a Metzias. And that is k'mei hasitra achre v'aklippe. That is like klippe itself. Hanikra aveda zara. Right? We look in Torah. Klippa is referred to as Avodah Zarah. In title, the Lashon Elikim Acherim is refers to what are they? They're a Metzias, and that's Avodah Zarah. Machmas. Why are they called Acherim? What did we explain in Perechov Beis? Acherim means that they're acherim neged ratzna elyon, hester panim of ratzna elyon, because right, that's what he explained. Like somebody who throws something behind his back, Right? That's why they're called Elokim Acherim. And Elokim Acherim is Avodah Zarah. So, you have in the world those things that are neged Ratzon Hashem. And then there's in the person. So you have food that's you're not allowed to eat, or times that you're not allowed to do malacha. Right? There's a Yerushalmi we spoke about once. A guy went out for a walk Shabbos afternoon. He was in his backyard. There was a break in the fence. He's like, oh, after Shabbos I have to fix it. Then he's like, ooh, I thought about it on Shabbos. I'm not going to fix it ever again. That's usually what I tell my wife. Right? In other words, you have the actions in the world, and then you have Gimel Avushi Anefesh. Shemiklipas Noiga, Shabi Yisrael, that if a Yid puts himself into to think deliberately with intent about something wrong. Shehem machshava dibur u'maisa hamelu boshim b'shasa tzugezun b'shasa loisase deiraisa derabbanon. A person methodically plans to lie, to cheat, whatever, he thinks about it, speaks about it, and he does it. To be jealous, what does jealous mean? To buy it, to take it, whatever. V'chein, not only the machshava, the levushim, the machshava dibur u'maisa, but mahus hanefesh atzmo, hamelubeshes bilvusha, the person. Right? There's, like he's explained before, there's the nefesh itself. Kulam miyuchadim mamish b'sitr achro klipazu anekras aveda zara. When a person does an aveda, when a person engages in the activity, he becomes one. He becomes like not a chariot, more. He becomes one. Literally, he becomes one with klippa. In other words, he separated himself, he identified with, he acted out something that's against Hashem, manikras aveda zara. He became an idol. It equated. That's aveda zara. We're referring now to Sholosh Klippas Atmeis. Right? Sholosh Klippas Atmeis. The Alter Rebbe is going to explain. Kedusha is generous. It gives. Klippa takes. Within klippa, you have klippa that still has a cheshbon. I'm going to take, but I'll give also. It's like give and take, And then you have like the ultimate klippa, it only takes, right? Like we learned in the other mimer about why the Aron went in the midbar for 40 years, because the midbar doesn't give, nothing grows, because it only takes. The idea of the midbar, that's like ultimate klippa. Like what narcissism is as a category, as a definition, of what's the disorder. I take. I don't contribute. So when a person is, that's the Avodah Zarah. That's tachlis haklippa. That's tachlis. That's ultimate, complete klippa. That's Avodah Zarah. V'lo yoid. Not only is when a person does an Avera, not only is he becomes one with the Aveda Zarah, but Alter Rebbe says really the person becomes worse than the Aveda Zarah. And I'll explain. Elo, shebetelim utfeilim elo, the person becomes secondary to this klippah. Ugruim, upchusim imena ma'od, they're much worse. They're on a much lower level. They're in a deeper state of decline. They're denying Hashem even more. They're morally more bankrupt, and they're denying Hashem even more. It's two things, the Alter Rebbe is, and it's ma'od, it's in a great extent. It's like a whole different level. Like when the Gemara says, you have someone who's rich with silver, with gold, and you praise them that they have a lot of silver. Like you're missing it's on a whole different level of quality. Why? Kihi, because Klippa itself is a spiritual force. It doesn't have arms and legs. It doesn't have a body. Kihi eina melubeshes beguf chumri. It doesn't have a body, right? With chumri, it's an earthy body. A metzias gashmi. V'yeidas es ribayna, it's aware of Hashem. Ve'ena meredes, but he doesn't go against Hashem. The Satan. The Satan, of course, he's klipa, but he does what Hashem wants. It's like when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, right? The king who went, Nebuchadnezzar, Hashem said, he's my agent. He called himself the Shliach of Hashem. Because even though it's my phone is telling me I can add effects using hand gestures. Okay, so now I'm going to A instead of an AI. Okay.
If you're
Okay. so, right? So, there are things, in other words, let's say, whatever had to happen, Paray, Amalek, they're all agents of, at the Balak, at the end, Bilam, he only blessed the Yidden, he never cursed them, right? He gave bad advice later, whatever. But, so Klippa, it's a force for negativity, but it does what Hashem wants. It's aware of Hashem. Ve'ena meredes by lifail pu'ulasa, to do its doing, its bidding. B'mishlachas malachei royim shalo, by sending its bad agents. Shaloi b'shlichus shel mokem baruch hu chas v'shalom. It never sends them without Hashem's permission. It always has to consult. Ukemaimer Bilam, like Bilam said, Loi ucha la'avir es pi Hashem v'goyim. I can't go against what Hashem says. Ve'av shenikra Avodah Zarah, even though we call it the worst form, it's mamash Avodah Zarah. But nevertheless, hakorule elakada elakaya. They refer to Hashem as the God of the gods. Ve'enam yecholim laver klal al retzeni yizbarech. They don't have the ability because they're aware of Hashem's greatness and because they're a spiritual force. Therefore, they can't go against Hashem. Ki yoidim umasigim shahu cheyusam v'keyumam. They know that Hashem sustains them. Sheyoinkim, they know that their chayis is mebchines acharayim, the acharayim sharotzen alim baruch hu amakif aleim. I'll just say this as an example. B'chlal, what Alter Rebbe is talking about now is the majority of Klippa. There is a miut that's in a lower place that goes against. But I'll just to talk about it from a current events perspective. You have people who work for the government. The government has no oversight, let's say. There's very little oversight. But imagine you have people who, even though there's no oversight, they're not committing crimes in their jobs. They're not just taking all the money and taking it home. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, a person works for the Board of Education. So he hires his friends. You understand? It's not that he's not committing crimes. He's just turning it. Or they're pushing their. But if someone comes and if they get audited, I didn't do any aveira. I played by the books.
I support my agenda, so like Department of Education, support special books, special.
right. So I come to work. I'm not talking about people who don't come. I come to work, and I exercise my power. Why? Because there's no boss. So if there's no boss, I'm the boss. So the Alter Rebbe is discussing here, Klippa, that it's so why am I saying a marshal of a government? Because the government, there's no oversight in the sense a person who has a business that has to make money. So they're involved. They have to see what's going on, the balance sheet. At the end of the day, we're making money. We made money today. We lost money. What's going on? So the involvement is much closer. That's what we call pnimius ratzon ha'elyon. The areas where Hashem's chayis is an eifim pnimi. So Hashem is watching it closely, and okay, here yes, there no. But the Klippa knows, like Bilam understood that his relationship to Hashem is b'chinas makif. He understood that Hashem is not waiting every morning to see, is he putting on tefillin? Bilam, let me see what he's doing. So he had a lot of room. There's distance. So that's why he's like, maybe, let me see, maybe I can get a curse in over here, over there, So Klippa is aware that its way of receiving chayas is from the distance. In other words, Nebuchadnezzar, he calls himself a shliach, but he doesn't put on tefillin. He doesn't keep Shabbos. Yeah.
They do dirty job, they got paid for it, and not directly.
Yeah. The oversight part, yeah. So they know sheyoim ki mibchinas acharayim dacharayim shorotzen elohim baruch hu hamakif aleim elo sheini kosam v'chayu. And then even more, says the Alter Rebbe, that the chayas that they do receive, hi mibchinas golus b'teichom. The money that they do receive, they could use it in a certain way, the way they want. So it's b'chinas golus, because that's not like Hashem's intention. A little bit they could do what they want. And therefore, lahach shivatzman elikus. I'm an important guy. What do you mean? The federal government can't tell me what to do. This is my city. I'm the mayor. I do what do you mean? Who? You're a Metzias, right? This denies the truth that really we're all one with Hashem. We're all within Him. So that's the way Klippa views its existence. It's aware of Hashem, but because of the distant position, he exercises his own power. But still, they don't deny Hashem's existence totally. They don't say there is no Hashem. Again, al roiv. The Alter Rebbe brought previously that a klippa could say, Ani va'afsi oid. Right? Afsi, there's nothing other than me. Elo, the korele elokada elokaya, dahainu, chiyusom v'kiyumom hanimshach v'yered alei meritzeni yizbarech. They know Hashem gives me my life. V'lachein einan evrim ritzeni yizbarech lo'elam. That's why they don't go against Hashem. V'imkein, being that that's the case. Ha'adam ha'ever al ritzeni yizbarech, the person who does sin, he's much worse, because he's actually going against Hashem. He's worse than Sitra. Hanikras Aveda Zara v'Elakim Acherim is even in a lower position than Klippa and Aveda Zara. V'hu betachlis hapirud mi'chudi v'achdus shlagadir baruch. He's in the farthest position a person could be from Hashem, Yeser Mimena, more than Klippa. Ukeilu, it's as if Kefer Bachdusa Yeser Mimana Chas V'Sholem. You see what Alter Rebbe did? He put in the word Keilu. It's as if he denies Hashem completely. Because the Alter Rebbe says, I know the truth that when someone puts you in a headlock, you're going to say Hashem, Hashem. I know that if someone squeezes you, it's all going to reset. But for right now, when you're comfortable, it appears like you forgot. Right? I don't know any of that. Like the Zohar writes, it's Chaim Sham Beisev Peradalid. What is that? The Zohar, what does he write there in Eitz Chaim? That the guf, the way the guf obstructs the Eibishter is greater than any spiritual. The physical manifestation, you can't compare it. Shahara Shabeilam Haza Chumri. The Ra, the way it appears in this world, Hu Shmare Aklipas Agasos Chulu. It's like a knockoff. It's even lower version than the way it is of the worst klippas of Ruchnius. Vu Tachlis Abir V'Chulu. That's the final junk, literally what goes to the junkyard. You took out anything redeemable. Whatever I could use, I could get some fuel out of this, I could bid this, whatever, I could get some fertilizer, and then there's nothing I could do. This is totally worthless. That's the klippa and Elam Haza. There's nothing redeeming. V'lachein, that's why I call Maisa Elam Haza, because Chumrius is that low. That's why the Chazal tell us that all Maisa Elam Haza, all the deeds of this world, again, outside of mitzvahs, are koshim, veroyim, they're severe. because there's no one's being helpful. No one's being friendly. It's a harsh world. But Rishoyim are more dominant. It's a dangerous place. Yeah. Even, in other words, even work. It's like a guy comes, he's like, I'm an honest guy, I want to put in a day's work. Why does it have to be grueling? You know, it's like, you need work to be done? Here, yeah, but you have to come 5 o'clock in the morning. You know, there always has to be something that makes it, you know, it's like the world it's a harsh place, you know, it's, you know, as a chazan, I always think to myself, whenever there's you know, you have to say slichas 1 a.m., you know, like, when are you going to daven? When's the most important day in Kippur? You can't have a coffee in the morning. There's no food. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to lay in the Megillah. First you're going to fast. It's like, come on, set it up that you could have something nice, a little chicken soup, and then you could go daven for the Yom, you know? Even shuls that start davening 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, it takes time for the voice to wake up. You think you wake up 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock you're ready to sing? It doesn't work that way. Yeah, 5 o'clock you have to start singing and warming up and this. So the kitzur, because that's Olam Hazeh. Olam Hazeh is a harsh. That's the way it is. It's a difficult place. Now the 2 dots. That's why the Gemara says al pasuk kisiste ishta. So just on this is the Gemara that Al Rebbe brings from Saita. So the pasuk says, if a woman goes astray, so the word sister ishte, so the Gemara says that the word sister comes from the word tat, tough tes. Tough tes means to stray. In other words, there's a line, you know, there's a path, there's a straight path. You move away, you know, you keep traveling, you keep going farther and farther away.
Railway rules.
Yeah. So Chazal really they're asking. There's an extra letter. It should have said ish kitite or sita, like vayet Moshe es yodai. You have the word hatei elokai oznacho. We say in davening on Monday and Thursday. That's a word, you know. With a sin, the extra letter in the word, there's something wrong. So that's why the Gemara comes and says, by the way, this is teaching us something new. Really, it also has the word shtus, right? Foolishness. I just want to mention this. Some of us, we discussed this in the past. The Rebbe Rashab, in one of his kontresim, he develops a whole idea. And if we think about it, we see it a lot in the world that we live in right now, in the world that we live in America. What is the inyan of the Ruach Shtus, the foolishness? That people look at frum Jews, and they look at them with like a certain scorn, that they're silly. Well, why are you wearing hats that they used to wear in Russia 200 years ago, the nobles used to wear, like we're in America? These fur hats, right? You know, like, well, what are you doing wearing 5 layers in the summer and fake hair on your head? I don't know, and you know, many other things. You know, like they're the smart, intelligent people. They all do everything only normal, and we're the ones. You know, like we're the ones that are crazy. And then you walk and then you walk out in the street and you say, look at what the secular world, look at the things that people are doing. Like, are they lacking mishugoyim? Like, is there silliness missing there? Right? You know what I mean? Like, he says somehow we turned it in such a way that we only look at the right thing as like in Gashmias we justify. It's like. I was once in a rest area. Someone was making a coffee. They took like 14 teaspoons of sugar. I'm not being, it's not an exaggeration. Literally standing by the thing pushing it. And I was like, In other words, in the way that we behave, we know things are unhealthy, whatever. Or
Gashmish by itself neutral, but we call it raw, it's bad because people overabuse. So if not people, it's by itself doesn't do any bad. It doesn't go below against God.
Right, but I'm saying, why is it
people pay 400 tickets for hockey game? Stupid, really?
Right, I'm saying, why is it that, in other words, a person looks at his phone, how many hours was I on my phone today? 6 hours.
36 minutes more than yesterday.
I'm not, that's not normal. Right? But, so that's really shtus. But the shtus is that in that we say, no, okay. But, I went to shul 7 o'clock in the morning, that's crazy. Right? So that just to develop the idea, what's a ruach shtus. So back to the Gemara. Ein adam ever aveda, the source of all sin, the only reason a person does an avera is because there's some type of delusion, some type of shtus, there's a folly. He says like this, Ta'afilu isha hamana efes, shadaita kala, even a woman who's being seduced, who loses her, it's hard for her to resist. She's being tempted. She's in a vulnerable, compromised state. Even her, she would have controlled herself if not for the ruach shtus. There's some justification. That's concealing her avas Hashem in her nefesh elikis. That somehow she could accept, I'm a good person, and I could still do this. Ledovka.
Starting from Zachava, miscalculated.
Well, yeah, okay. So, in other words, if there wouldn't have been the Ruach Shtus, so it would have been clear to her, Ledovka b'amunas Hashem v'yichudei v'achdusei. Like if someone's going to come to you and say, kill someone, are you crazy? Here's a married woman, go be with someone else. Are you crazy? Like, it would be black and white. What do you mean? The Eibusher says you're not allowed to. Right? Yosef HaTzadik didn't, it's not... There's two ways, right? One is, what are people going to say? The other is, Hashem said no. It's a different response. Like, what do you mean? I'm a Jewish. That's it. Even if it's a matter of life and death, no matter what, they're not going to chas v'sholom. In other words, because, like the Alter Rebbe will explain shortly, because when it comes to avodah zarah, you can't delude yourself. You're not like, I'm going to go to a church and I'll still be a Jew. Okay, really. So because that's the case, therefore you just don't allow it. There's such a strong boundary that even if a person threatens you, I'm going to kill you. Okay. Even if it's just bowing. In other words, I know that in my heart I don't believe that this wooden statue does anything. But still, I'm not going to bow. How much more so to conquer the temptation, obviously, to withstand the temptation of sinning, desire is less painful than the pain of death. And what distinguishes why here she's like, okay, I'll do it, and there she's not, says no? That's because of a ruach shtus. The fact that for her there's a distinction. This is okay, this is not okay. The isur ishtachava, that she says, well, to be promiscuous, that's okay. But to bow to an idol, that's no way. In other words, there's two things. One is, I'll still remain a good person, even if I'm promiscuous. The second is, bow to an idol? No, never. But this is,
How explains the next step? After one avera, you go to next avera, until avoid the Zorah. I mean, it's a chain.
Yeah, but it's all with the Ruach Shtus. Right. It's right. In other words, it neutralizes slow. It normalizes slowly. Ad, it's like right. It's like imagine. They say parents love their kids more than anything in the world besides their Shabbos afternoon nap. There's such a thing, they say. So, right? Imagine, you fell asleep Shabbos afternoon. You wake up. It's a Shabbos for summer. You wake up 3 hours later. The kids, they wrote with makeup all over the walls. They spilled all the perfume. They turned the whole house. You can't imagine, right?
But you had a good nap.
Then when you're standing in the door, and now they're looking at the artwork that they created, they understand that this is right. But somehow,
In the process.
it happened. It developed. It started with something small, right? That's the ruach shtus. It starts with something silly, Oh, let's go out, whatever. And until it. So this is all ruach shtus. Hamalbeshes lenefesh elikis, right? It vests. In other words, it hides, it wraps, it conceals the nefesh elikis ad b'chinas chochma sheba, till the highest level. It could influence up to chochma, but not chochma sheba nefesh. V'loy ad b'chlal, not chochma pnei eir Hashem ha'malubush bo, because that's where the spark is kanal. Aval b'emes la'amitay, but in truth, the truth is, afilu avera kala, even when a person does a light sin, any sin, a person knows he's doing something wrong and he does it. You're going against Hashem. You're completely separate from Hashem, from the oneness of Hashem. Right? You're in the world of what Alter Rebbe spoke about in Perek Chav Beis, that the shinui is el hamakablim, that we feel separate. We feel like we're our own Metzias. And it's yoyser misitra achro klipa, and nikras halukim achirim v'aveda zara mamash. Okay, I wanted a few points to make, but the time is low. Worse than all the things that get chayas from klipa, behemis tmeyas, chayas, ephis tmeim, shkasim rumasim kamayim, yitush kadmach, even a mosquito was created before you. Because there's something they're not even as bad as you. Pirush. The af yitush, even a mosquito, shemachnes ve'enim moitzi, it only takes in, there's no excrement. Which that symbolizes ultimate klipa. She klipa hayoser tachtoina or a chayka mibchinas aglusha mashbal tachzarichu. The whole union of kedusha is to be mashpia, so it's the farthest. Keidemes lisha chayta b'ishtalshus v'yirid is a chayis. It's at a higher level than a human being. Kol shekain sharko balachayim atmeim. All other animals that are not like a yitush, they also contribute. V'afilu chayis rois, even the carnivorous animals. Shakulam einam mishanim tafkidam. They don't go against how Hashem, the purpose Hashem gave them, the design for living. Upkudasa yizbarich shamra rucham. Their spirit guards, lives by Hashem's model. Right? They follow the order that Hashem gave them. Now, even though they don't see, in other words, what you're telling me, how could you deny Hashem? I'm like, what do you mean? Because I don't see. But mazlayu chazi, by the animals, it's also the same. What do the animals know? They're not aware. But there is a spiritual source. The animals are also rooted. They also have a mazel. Yeah, and we have a mazel. So like the pasuk says, Hashem said to Adam that they're going to fear you. What are they going to fear? Not your body. They're going to fear the spirit of Hashem in you. So they see the spirit of Hashem that we have. Kapirish Razal, she'ein chayira mishalas ba'adam, Elohim kein nidma lakabehema. Right, an animal, if it sees the holiness of a person, there are many stories of Hasidim and yeah, in Tanakh, but I'm talking about even Chassidim. They said Yisrael Neach, he was walking and there were some dogs running. So he opened up his coat and the dogs ran away.
You saw South.
Belinitsky. No, Belinitsky in France, yeah.
He opened his coat.
Yeah.
Oh.
Tzadikim she'ein tzelem elokim mistalik me'al pneihem. Tzadikim will, at all times, the image of Hashem that's imprinted on them is always present. So what happens? Kol chayis rois eskafyin kamayo. All animals are completely subservient to them. Mishkosu b'zoyar gabei Daniel b'goy v'aroyis. The Zohar explains why is it that when he went into the lion's den, Daniel, that they didn't hurt him. V'im came. Hachayte ve'evrit tzeni yizborich afilu ba'avera kala. B'shas ma'aseh hu b'tachlis harichuk mikdusha al yeno. While he does the avera, he's in the farthest place. I'm going very quick. During the time that he does the avera, he separated himself completely. Now the Alter Rebbe has an argument. What do we see? I don't know how. Why is it? In other words, you're telling me that it's the Ruach Shtus that tells me, oh, this avera is okay, that avera is not. It says, what do you mean? In the Torah it says that this avera, if someone threatens you, you're allowed to sin. And this one, you're not allowed to. So there is a real difference. You're not allowed to bow to an idol if someone warns you, but you're allowed to be Mechal Shabbos. So you see there's a difference. Shabbos is different than Aveda Zarah. And it's not because we're deluding ourselves, they actually are different. So V'gam yaver v'al yahorig, we have a halacha to transgress. If someone threatens you, do the avera. If someone has a atzola call, you mechal Shabbos. Hainu kapirush chazal. All of that is only to strengthen Torah. Amra Torah says, Chalil all of Shabbos achas, desecrate one Shabbos, so you should be able to keep many other Shabbos in the future. Kedei sheyishmer, Shabbos is harbe in the future, and that's by every mitzvah. V'lei mishum kalos averes v'chumra, and it's not that one mitzvah is more serious and one is less. Teid, I'll bring you a proof. Shaharei Shabbos, we find in halacha that Shabbos and Aveda Zarah are equal. Shabbos chamura ushkula ka'aveda Zarah le'inyan shchitas mumar le'davar echad be'yeredei esim beis. So if a person is mechal Shabbos and he shechts, it's no good. The same like a person who serves an idol, so they're equal. A person who's promiscuous, they sleep around, their shchita is still kosher. V'afilu hachi still pikuach nefesh deicha Shabbos, but v'lei gili aroyis. If someone threatens someone, you can't live with someone else, but you can be mechal Shabbos. Elo d'gzeres hakasavu, because that's that's the order from the Torah. It's not with seichel. I'll say one thing and then we'll continue from Ella next week. I'll just say one thing. In Klippa, there's male and female. Okay, and we had in Perek Zayin in the Agor, the Alter Rebbe spoke about Nukve de Klippa. Nukve de Klippa, and then there's the Char of Klippa. You have a person, he's a bandit, he's a thug. You have a person, he's a follower. You know, you fill out a form you send a kid to high school. Is he a follower or a leader? Okay, or other, I don't know. So we say, follower is not so bad. A guy who's a gangster, he has things that he does. He's into certain things. He likes cars, he likes whatever he's into, but this is his identity. Then when you come to him and say, you want to do drugs? Like, I don't do drugs. I have a mikzoah. I steal cars and I do whatever. A follower, he'll do anything. Yeah, he doesn't initiate. But it's real, in a certain way, it's much worse. He's open to any possibility. So, a klippa itself is like the Zohar. Bilam, this one, Nebuchadnezzar, the Satan, yeah? but the person is makabel. Hayom Emelei Asei Kach. Right? Today you do this, tomorrow you do something else. Like, what do we know? So, and that's also an aspect that because we receive from Klippa, we're worse actually. So, doing the right thing, the first thing is to set a boundary. Like, no, I don't just do, just because it's available. Someone says, "Wow, I take drugs. What drugs? Whatever."
Whatever's on the menu.
Whatever they bring, right? No, like that's the starting point.